Greg, my friend, I've been waiting for this moment. I'm so excited we got to start early. Although we're not starting early because you and I have had an amazing conversation about male grooming rituals and how each one of us has this beautiful bald head in its own way. You showed me about your shave butter, which I'm definitely going to purchase here sometime soon. Let, Look, we literally just paused in a beautiful conversation just so I could hit the record button. Pick that back up. Let's talk about mature masculinity, man, because so many dudes need to hear about that.
First of all, do you want to like maybe pump up your viewership by doing a commercial for the shave butter and letting the company know, hey,
Are they sponsoring you at all? Because I mean,
oh,
if whatever shit,
oh,
if you're making a couple bucks off of it,
no. Yeah, so you're right. It's always a beautiful conversation with you, Dan. That was the thing that I felt like divinely blessed when we were put right next to each other at the retreat with IPI and teamed us up with each other, and I just found a resonance of like two men, entering into that phase of mature elderhood, mature
Mhm.
masculine elderhood, and so we get a we started talking about our
Greg, I'm gonna jump in. I'm not ready. I'm not sure. I'm ready for that word. That really, I have to be honest here. For I know we're doing a podcast for the people, but it all of a sudden feels like therapy because you just put me in elderhood, and I'm feeling some heart palpitations. And
good.
what? Whoa, what does that mean, man?
That's part of the initiation, man.
Whew.
What kind of an
Look,
initiation if you didn't
I
feel
think
some
doing ketamine with you was initiation enough, but
vibe?
this elderhood thing
You guided me, didn't you? And you showed up
it
for
was an honor and a pleasure, brother.
my pleasure and my honor. And you do that for people all over, right? So, I have a teacher, he's 80 years old, and he laughs at me. He's like, I'm 63 years old. He's like, you're young. You're no elder. He's like, the Navajo say you're not an elder until you're like, whatever, 90 something years old. But we live in a society that is really suffering so deeply, from the lack of depth
Mhm.
within the masculine realm. Um, and that's not only something that only men can access, right? And then part of that depth, I think, comes from as we get older, we begin to become softer, right? We ripen. I see men that as they get older, they get harder, they get more rigid.
Mhm.
I think some of the illnesses that so many men get in old age, hardening of the arteries, right? Hard of hearing, right? All of this lack of flexibility, lack of pliability.
That was the word I was going to go with. We lack, if we let it go that way, we lack that flexibility in our thinking and in our cognitive structure, and that can be really problematic.
Exactly. So I think that the natural process of evolution for a man is to begin to pour more energy into the feminine aspect of you know receptivity and flexibility and the capacity to come from an open heart, to be nurturing, to make space, really. I mean, women have been making space for us for thousands and thousands of years. We should just apologize for that up front, right? But it's like our job is to sort of make space for all of these aspects of ourselves and soften. So it's like any other, if a fruit starts to get ripe, it softens.
Mhm.
So what I was telling Dan right before we came on here was that before I gave myself permission to shave my head. I had a story that the reason why we have to lose our hair as men is because we suffer from arrogance and nature wants to punish us, which is a victim
Mhm.
kind of thinking, right? But then, when I got to that place where I still had hair, and I wanted it to be a little empowering to actually choose it before it was chosen for me, to go down and pick up a razor and get some shave butter and turn it into a self-care ritual. And I was able to let go of all of these ideas about my worth and my lovability as being connected to my appearance, how attractive I am. And that letting go led to this incredible sense of freedom, like a lightening of a load that I carried for, decades, right? Gotta look good. I gotta stay in shape. I gotta get my hair right. I gotta, like, all of this stuff about my appearance because I'm judging myself that way. I think my worth is all wrapped up in that, right? So I think that it is a rite of passage, and how you approach it, do you fight against it, or do you allow yourself to soften and become a more receptive and accepting of nature as nature is unfolding, and just surrender to it? And that's could sound like it is a very mundane, type of conversation, but we could be talking about psychedelics, and
Mhm.
it's the same exact thing.
In terms of that softening, in terms of that opening up to experience.
It's the surrender, right? Like,
Yeah.
people that are fearful of us of the space that you enter within psychedelics, and maybe most people are, to some degree. And there are some that I have that fear about, like, what's going to happen to me.
Mhm.
But what I have found is that where I am able to surrender and just let go, like, take me, just take me. I surrender all of who I am to you. Take all of me. I trust that I'm going to be okay. You
I think
invariably
that's a key word.
get rewarded.
But you got to have that trust, right? Much like trusting in, going back to masculinity, having that trust that you are lovable, that you are worthwhile, right? We live in a world that has so many, for men in particular, so many misplaced values of worth. And when we challenge those and find those for ourselves, we get to soften, we get to open up to that experience of, all right, life, take me. And I think psychedelic work is very much a microcosm of real life.
Yeah, right on.
And the important thing, right? That trust, you have to have the right set and setting. I know for me going into both of our practicums, um, I was not comfortable. I was not ready. I went back to that very masculine quality, wanting to control the situation. So before ketamine, I went and had my own experience, legal and local. I went up to the local ketamine clinic. I got to know the nurse there, and we kind of talked. And I said, all right, I want to try this, and it was amazing. So by the time I met you in Boulder and we journeyed together on opposite days, right? I was ready, but then also somewhat nervous. And then when it came to psilocybin, woof.
Yeah.
Never had I done anything like that. Only read the stories. Grew up with, Nancy and Ronald Reagan telling me this is my brain. This is my brain on drugs, and
Yeah.
the egg cracking in the front. I thought my brain was going to fry in a frying pan. Um, but having that set and setting, and I speak to this to so many people, right? Having the right people around you, having the right situation, having trust, and knowing that you're going to be taken care of allows you to unfold and let it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. You can allow if you can work your mindset around, and this is a process that I went through, where I started question, why am I afraid of this? And most of my experiences with 5-MeO DMT, uh, which is, a radical e- e- consciousness expanding experience, instant ego dissolution, if you can allow that. But what I had to do is work my mindset around like, okay, why should I trust this medicine? Why should I not trust it? Does it want to hurt me? Why would I think that nature would want to hurt me? Why would I think that? Right? That says something about me. If I expect that it's going to hurt me, I don't trust nature, right? Maybe man has been at odds with nature for so long that we have a right to think that maybe nature is mad at us. People walk around feeling like God is mad at me or God abandoned me or whatever. And when I say God, I mean whatever your concept of God is.
Hmm.
Maybe it's nature, but I had to work it around so that I began to reason for myself that this medicine wants what's good for me. This medicine doesn't want to hurt me. The medicine wants to impart its wisdom to me. It wants to dance in me, right? That's sort of like the way I began working with psilocybin, right? It's just like I could feel it dancing and like I feel it coming alive inside of me and as if this intelligence comes up from the earth and wants to just enjoy experiencing the sensation of being inside of a human body
Hmm.
and then to say thank you to me by then rendering images and awarenesses and insights and guidance if I simply am willing to surrender and say, take me and thank you. And I come forward, you know, from a perspective of thanks, like thank you in advance, right? And that always yields, in my experience, that always yields a positive experience. I think people that have adverse experiences with not just with psychedelics, right? People get adverse experiences with weed. People
Hmm.
have adverse experiences with alcohol.
Alcohol. Yeah.
People have
Well,
adverse experiences with food.
very true. Yeah. And so, man, you made so many good points. I want to go back to that idea of so many of the psychedelics we use in therapy are derived or just purely naturally occurring. And here we are. We've been taught for 50 years or so that those are illegal and you should stay away from them and they're criminal, even though they've been used for thousands of years. But you know what? You should trust the big businesses that are making billions of dollars off of giving you a pill every day and people living in McMansions everywhere. Those are the trustworthy people because it went through an approval process by the FDA. Meanwhile, what you're promoting only went through an approval process of medicine people, men and women using them for thousands of years and healing ceremonies with indigenous people. When you put it that way, not trusting nature, it's like, oh my goodness, how have we gone so far away from where we could be or should be?
Yeah.
Okay. Look, Greg, you are far more the intrepid traveler that I am. I realized that when we first met here, we meet in Boulder back in November. I'm getting ready to have my second ketamine experience, and I think that was like your fourth of that week, maybe, or something like that. Like I joke, but I know you've journeyed a lot more. Let's go back for the audience's sake. 5-MeO DMT, which I remember when I first started teaching this, I had to like count on my fingers, 5 M, get all the letters right. And now I love the fact that I've studied this, so 5-MeO DMT just rolls right off the tongue. And it's such an amazing substance. This Talk a little bit about where 5-MeO DMT comes from, and it that's the Toad's psychedelic, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, it comes from the I think it's Bufo alvarius
Mm.
toad that comes from the Sonora Desert. There are other I think there are other toads around the world that that are of that same genus of toad, but they don't have the venom. Um, what happens is that the toad, and this is a unique condition where normally you're only going to find a toad in a pond, right?
Hmm.
They they live in water. This toad lives underground in a desert for 9 months before it emerges. 9 months soaking up all of the wisdom of the earth for 9 months. Same amount of time it takes for a human being to be born. And then comes out, and then, there are these glands like around its eyes and head that secrete this venom when they feel endangered. One of the things that I learned from my medicine woman was that typically it comes out in a sort of aerated format, but when a human being handles it, they dump it in these thick
Hmm.
gobs of goo, and then they just scrape it and they put it on a glass, and then it crystallizes, and then they break it up.
Hmm.
The chemical compound is 5-MeO-DMT. So it's variation or a relation, to the DMT that we know from
Hmm.
ayahuasca or,
Right.
peyote or psilocybin.
And DMT being, check it out, I think I've learned this too, dimethyltryptamine,
That's right.
which chemically, I mean, like you said, there are so many variations of it. One of which, all right, listeners, if you take nothing away from this today, take this: DMT secreted by the pineal gland in the human brain, right? So we have this in our brain already. It's not like the old Beavis and Butthead episode where they're out licking toads just trying to find something to get high off of. This is an actual substance that through different mystical experiences, spiritual experiences, we secrete ourselves. However, we also recognize stress. Damn, Greg, we didn't even know we were going to go here, but what does stress do to the pineal gland? It hardens it. It crystallizes that pineal gland, and when we
Calcifies.
stop having these experiences,
Yeah.
when we don't take care of ourselves. And so, um, sorry, going back to your experience, DMT, ayahuasca, peyote, right? All derivatives of dimethyltryptamine, DMT.
So, just to piggyback on something you were saying about how that they say that we have it naturally produced in our pineal gland, but a tiny little bit. And some of the theories that I've been hearing that for scientists are sort of bantering around is like, what's the point of it, right? Well, one of the things that I heard a scientist speaking about recently, I can't remember who he was, but he said that they think that it's possible that when we are dying, when we die, when people have a near-death experience, it's released.
Hmm.
Now, not only does it buffer the transition from this life to the next life after this life, but if a person doesn't die and they return from the near-death experience, DMT has a buffering or protective quality to protect the neural the cells so that they can return from that experience without the same level of brain damage or maybe no brain damage.
I have not heard this hypothesis before,
Yeah.
but that makes sense. That's why we pursue DMT and psychedelic assisted therapy because it's got a neural protectant quality.
So now
Whoa.
that's right. And when we go back throughout history, we look at the ancient scriptures, right? The Vedas, the
Mhm.
Upanishads, um, maybe the Bible, right? A lot of those scriptures sound like a person who is under the influence of DMT. some people are like, well, this is evidence that the ancient prophets they were practicing with psychedelics, but maybe they were in caves where it was pitch dark and they were exposed to nothing but darkness for maybe weeks or months on end and breathing in certain patterns, which then allows the DMT in the pineal gland to dump into the brain. And then an individual experiences what we call samadhi, right? Or nirvana, right? It's another,
Mhm. Mm.
Christians call it heaven, all right? Enlightenment, that experience that we always sort of like take it for granted. And I even think, the Judeo, maybe more like the Christian twist on all of this is that if you want that, you have to work really hard for that, right? Because God's watching. And when you're done with your life, you get rewarded or you get cast into a fiery hell, right? So you got to work really hard for it. I had an experience about 15 years ago when I decided to go up, get off the grid. I went to live in an ashram up in the mountains. And all I did for 1 year was meditate, chant, pray, yoga, and service for one whole year. The thinking up there was the same as the Christian Catholic theology that I was raised in. Like, you can't experience samadhi until you work really hard,
Mhm.
right? And you got to put a lot of lifetimes in. And, that's almost it's the same. It's the same. It's like a work ethic approach to enlightenment. But maybe it's not about work, right?
Mhm.
Maybe it's about what we were talking about in the beginning. Maybe it's about
Mhm.
surrender, right?
Mhm.
Maybe it's about like managing our bodies and our breath. I mean, that's what yoga was designed for. Yoga was specifically asana was designed to make it possible for these guys to sit on a deer mat in a cave for weeks or months at a time and just breathe and go deep and deep and deep into themselves and then come out with a scripture as beautiful as the Upanishads. And if you leave this podcast with if you're looking for any reading, that's the one. The Upanishads, you open up any page and it's like light bouncing off of the page. And it
Mhm.
supposedly came from these rishis that were in these caves doing this deep meditation.
Yeah, I'm going to
So
make sure you give me a link to the best ways. I know you know the best ways to find the Upanishads and where people can find them. But Greg, and I want you to continue there, but what you're describing is what this realm you and I are walking into is such a beautiful. And I don't want to. It is new in the way that it is taking hard science research, but there's such a spiritual component together. It's almost like we're finding this new melding of science and religion in such a meaningful way.
yeah, absolutely. That that is the meaning of yoga, union,
Hmm.
right? And maybe it's one of the side effects of working with these medicines, or not just the medicines, but these practices.
Hmm.
Because we're including these breathing practices, right? Wim Hof, holotropic breath work,
Hmm.
DMT breathing, shamanic breathing, all of these breathing practices, I put them in the same category. If you're a psychedelic practitioner, I don't think there's any better integration tool than breath work. And if you're not yet ready to or interested in diving into psychedelics, but you are interested in having an experience of yourself that is beyond your name and your identification with your form and all of the things that you have, breath work can do that for
Hmm.
you, right?
Hmm.
I don't know if they know if the breath work can actually release the DMT from the pineal gland. I think it's up in the air right now. You can absolutely you can uh, precipitate that experience within your mind and in your body, right? So uh, I don't know. Did I just go on a tangent? Did you ask me
I
a
think, well, I was just going to point out learned people have been engaging in these breathing techniques again for thousands of years without psychedelics. And it's kind of like we've missed so much of that. I remember the first time I was ever introduced into any kind of breath work, it was actually with the didgeridoos behind me. It was when I first moved to this area and I was looking for something to do with my girls. And I see this flyer for didgeridoo. I'm like, what the hell is a didgeridoo? And it looked like something fun for the kids. And so I met this guy, great guy. We're still friends today. And that was probably 15, 20 years ago. Um, but he was talking about, and he wrote this book about his anxiety and deep breathing and the didgeridoo, because the didgeridoo, an ancient Aboriginal instrument, fosters this weird kind of breathing, man. This like circular, I can't even do it yet. This circular breathing, but it accesses different parts of the brain. Why don't we, we live in a time where stress has made us such shallow breathers, is what I've read and seen. So right, we don't take deep breaths, and when we do, it's in this like, all right, well, you have to go sit and meditate for 5 to 10 minutes to take deep breaths. And it's like, man, no, you don't. There's so many other ways to do it, but we're missing it. We're missing it. And so I want to make sure we get a link. I'm going to ask you for so many links after this. That DMT breathing exercise you sent me, pretty cool stuff. We need to share that with people
right?
too.
Right on. Yeah, I think that we live in a society today where most people are breathing in a pattern that actually not only does it support survival consciousness, but it produces it. I work right now in an inpatient treatment center for people suffering dual diagnosis, and I can tell you that all of them that say they're diagnosed with anxiety. Almost all of them are diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, PTSD, um, panic attack disorder. They all breathe in a way that mimics survival. Shallow, rapid, shallow breathing. What happens is like the vagus nerve gets the message, I'm in trouble, I'm in danger, I might die if I don't fight or get out of here, right? And that's because of the way they breathe, right? It's like maybe we've learned to breathe that way because of the society we've lived in, right? But then nobody's actually teaching little children, maybe not
Mhm.
enough people are teaching little children, like here's how you breathe so that your brain and your nervous system believe that you're safe and that start talking to you and giving you an inner narrative that you're safe, right? So what I get them a lot of times, I'm like, well, I don't really know if you have a panic attack disorder or you just don't know how to breathe. So
Brother,
like,
I've caught myself saying that so many times in the
right?
past decade. Like everybody's coming, I'm anxious and I have panic attacks. I'm like, all right, tell me what you're experiencing. I'm like, no, that, I mean, yeah, you obviously got on Google, you looked at the criteria and you made your symptoms match the criteria, but you don't have a clinical anxiety situation. You got a lifestyle problem. Our instructor, Dr. Drew, this past week, right? That model last week, that integrative model he shared with us, like before we start throwing pills and anxiety, let's start looking at lifestyle. Let's look at the simple things like how you're breathing and what your stress levels are.
Yeah. I
And
tell
and do you remember he told us what Vegas means? Because I forget what it meant.
wandering.
Wandering. Why is that important?
That nerve wanders from the face through the brain down the neck and then spreads out throughout the body, right? And it starts in the face
Mm,
because our very foundational requirement for living and surviving and thriving is connection. And it doesn't actually get disrupted until some form of trauma says this is not safe. And so what's not safe is my connection with the people and the life around me, right? That's it. When connection is threatened, the vagus nerve then gets triggered and goes in, starts activating in different parts of the body, sympathetic, right around your heart where you need it so you can fight or run, or then it'll shut, or else it shut, if you can't do that, shuts down, goes down into the gut area. And all it's doing is waiting for it to become safe to be able to reconnect, right? And that's why people do drugs, right? You know,
Whoa, that's a big jump. Tell me more.
well,
Why do people?
okay, so if you're coming from the disease model, it's like you get high, you take drugs and you drink because you want to escape. There's even some judgment in that, like like if you
Mm.
don't have the courage to be able to
You don't have
sit,
the willpower.
you don't have the willpower, or you don't have the quote unquote the gift of desperation to be able to face life on life's terms, right? Let me tell you something. Um, First of all, what I have found is that most people that are stuck in a sympathetic nervous system state, fight, flight, they want to drink, they want to take depressants, downers, anything, opiates, anything to
Mhm.
numb themselves out so they don't have to feel all of that fight, flight going on. And people that are stuck in depression, apathy, hopelessness, all of these parasympathetic emotional states, they want to take uppers, cocaine, meth, right, speed, right? And people who have disorganized global activation intensity, which is a combination of sympathetic and parasympathetic activity going on at the same time, they mix
Mm.
uppers and downers, right? And so
Mhm.
maybe instead of like you don't have the gift of desperation or you don't have the willpower or you're too afraid to face reality on life's terms, maybe you're trying to find a way to get yourself back into a state of like safety and social connection. And there's more. A couple decades ago, I read another book called Why God Won't Go Away by these neuroscientists. You can Google that. I don't remember their names, but these neuroscientists wanted to they want to understand um, if we are neurologically and biologically programmed to seek for transcendent experience. So they hooked up three groups of people: Franciscan nuns, Tibetan monks, and transcendental meditators. And hooked them up to these MRIs, and then they put a little string on their finger and they watched a picture of their brain and they said, do your thing, whatever your practice is, do it. When you reach that point of union, transcendent union with all, just tug your finger. And then we'll take a snapshot of what's happening in your brain. And what they found was that it's the same exact place in everybody. So maybe people are getting high and drinking because we, on some level, remember that we are more than just this. And you asked me about 5-MeO. Here's how I think about 5-MeO. Five, five fingers, five senses, man, me, zero,
Mm. Mm.
zero. The experience of transcending while under the influence of 5-MeO. If I am willing and able to become zero,
Mm.
I am then rewarded with the remembrance of who I really am. That's a state of samadhi. And that sort of thing will drive a person to go back over and over again and find all of the ways in which I can access that state without the toad.
Mhm. So how do you bring that into life? How do you integrate that into day to day without chasing the high, without chasing the toad?
Well, first, I think you are going to chase it, because if you know I think if our emotional development is such that we think, you know, it's outside of me, and the only way I can get it is by
Mm,
chasing it, or um, if one's emotional maturity is not developed enough, where you might even be able to cultivate certain cities as a result of deep spiritual practice, uh, but you wear it on your ego,
mhm,
right? This was the topic of the enlightened ego. Um, then you're going to keep doing it. When I went to live in the ashram, I met a saint, Amma. She gave me a mantra, said, do this mantra 108 times a day. And since I was living in the ashram and had nothing to do but meditate, pray, and chant and do pranayama, I did the mantra like 3,000 times a day. And after about a month, I began experiencing special effects, and I really felt like I had arrived, man. And I began abusing it to get all my needs met, right? I wasn't emotionally, I wasn't emotionally uh, developed enough. I wasn't mature enough to be able to have that access to that kind of power. And I think maybe there's some mercy involved in this, that even though it's available to all of us at all times to be able to transcend the self and to become one with nature and become one with the universe and access all of the power that is available, we can't do it, because if we do it before we're emotionally prepared, we'll abuse it.
mhm.
So, when I first started experiencing DM 5-MeO, I went after it like mad. Okay.
Hmm.
I live 4 hours away from Mexico.
Okay.
I can gain access to this all the time. I went through an experience a couple of years ago where, I was experiencing states of samadhi and ego dissolution that went on for, like 10 days. And I learned how to appreciate my ego because, like, I couldn't do anything.
Yeah. That sounds like a lot, man.
I couldn't get anything done. But I kept chasing it. And if my first awareness was like, this is who I really am, and I don't have
Mm,
to work my fingers to the bone, it is the nature of the universe to love us.
mhm,
The universe is not withholding love and saying you can't have it unless you work your fingers to the bone, until you meditate enough, or kneel on rice when you pray, or master the asana, or memorize the Quran. That's the universe is not holding these conditions, right? It's love, right?
mhm.
It's here, it's there for us. And so I got to a point where my drive came for wanting to bring this into the world in the way that you're talking about. How do you integrate that? Is becoming frustrated by having a samadhi experience. And then an hour later, I'm having a road rage attack out,
Still got to
right?
come back to real life.
This petty, getting into my pettiness and like remembering my grudges and remembering the things that I'm afraid of, and all of the things that force me to shrink. And I started to look at the stark contrast between, like, my remembrance of who I really am in those glorious samadhi experiences inside of DMT. And then when I shrink, go back into like Greg Leota with all of his neuroses and complexes.
Mhm.
And that gives rise to, okay, what can I do on a daily basis? What do I got to stop doing? and what I got to start doing, right? There's habits that I had. Some of them I still have, but a lot of them have fallen away. DMT5-MeO will take away a lot of cravings that you have for unhealthy things. There are certain things I used to that were part of my life that are just like it's just a shadow
Hmm.
of what I really want and I know I can have. And they drop. But then there are other things about like the breath work and like it's physiology, like therapy is all it's physiology, right? Sleep, diet, what am I listening to? Right? Like I used to be all up in Facebook and social media, and now you hardly ever see me on there, right?
Right.
Because it's just a lot of toxicity, and I have a reaction to it, and that's
Mhm.
not good for me. So, what is self-love? Self-love is like I have the boundaries to be able to say, no, like first hour and last hour of every day, I dedicate to my emotional and my spiritual uplifting, right?
And that sounds like such a small price to pay. 1 hour in the beginning, 1 hour at the end of the day for that. And you make such an interesting point, right? Being on the socials is either toxicity or quick, cheap dopamine bursts, right? But very rarely is there much of great psychological benefit. Now, there can be some connection, things like that. It's not all bad. But when we catch ourselves checking it regularly and
Yeah,
compulsively,
yeah.
ain't nothing good about it.
Well, like you have to ask yourself a question, right? Like, uh, am I so angry around about what's happening in our country and so committed to social justice that I'm going on there every day and I'm raging,
Mm.
or am I just addicted to being angry and outraged? And if
Right.
I started going, is this a separate addiction that actually has nothing to do with what's actually happening?
Mhm.
Let me take a look at that. Let me maybe step back from that. I don't,
Well, I think going back to our discussion about, mature masculinity, man, there's something about anger that can be empowering and addictive and not very healthy. Wow. Yeah, that's a really good point.
I'm not one of these people, that takes I wouldn't call myself a pacifist or say, that, anger is the problem that prevents a person from experiencing deep spirituality. Um, I think that anger, we have it for a reason, and maybe developing a healthier relationship with it is what's in order. But overindulging in it, it, overindulging it is very unhealthy, for
Mhm.
our physiology and for our mind. Just as overindulging sadness or
Yeah.
overindulging fear.
Right. Yeah, emotions should be a warning, a signal, an indication. Hey, I'm angry. What do I want to do about it? I'm sad. What do I want to do about it? Emotions are a motivating factor for our behavior.
Yeah.
If I'm angry, I should do something about it. Not fuel more anger would be a good place to start, but to find something constructive or, sometimes it needs to be destructive, but even anger expressed in destructive ways can be healthy, whether it's breaking down the body through exercise, hard running, lifting, finding some deep breathing principles, going out and chopping wood, whatever it means, right? But to find a healthy direction for those emotions is definitely a sign of mature masculinity, responsibility, mature femininity as well, right? I think we're
Yeah.
seeing some of that too.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of fear that's permeating the world right
Mhm.
now. And I believe that it's just a trauma response. And if, we've been traumatized, the nervous system kind of gets locked in.
Mhm.
It keeps a person in sympathetic or parasympathetic mode, and it's just locked. It's just there,
Yeah.
like it's a protective wall. I'm not going to let you get hurt. This is what the nervous system
Mhm.
is saying. I'm not going to let you get hurt. We're going to stay on guard. We're going to be vigilant. We're not going to let anyone mess with you, right? You stay angry. So you go online and you automatically gravitate to fights and things that,
Yeah.
and am guilty of doing that, right?
Mhm.
So, and that seeing that, like seeing myself do that while I was involved in all of these deep spiritual quests,
Mm.
even to the point of
What a
having, hmm?
what I
Pardon?
was what a contrast, man. What a contrast. Engaging in
Oh,
a deep
oh,
spiritual quest, but then just like,
the contrast, rocked me.
yeah.
I started like that. I give thanks to Facebook for that because it made it really real. It put it right in my face.
Mm.
Like, dude, like who are you really, right? What is this persona? And then how's this behavior and this persona, how are they incongruent with each other? And who are you really anyway? And like this goes back to this concept of zero, like getting down to zero, like each identification, that I hold on to, like my name, there's one, my gender, there's two, my, my personality, my trauma, my job, and everything. It all just kind of adds up. And we begin to like think of ourselves in the terms of all of those numbers, when if you just boil it all down to zero, you don't have to cling to any of it. And then you can look at it and go like, wow, maybe I'm pretty incongruent.
Mhm.
And maybe I really am uneven and in some areas, in some places at different times, I'm more functional than I am others. And and so like this experience for me, having these radical awakening experiences with psychedelics has just illuminated for me. This is a practice. It's not an identity.
Mhm.
I'm not enlightened. My intelligence or my knowledge isn't wisdom. My wisdom isn't mine. And like all of these like things, like when you just like look at it honestly, it's not that romantic and it's not that impressive. It's and it's not unimpressive either. It's just like, wow, look at all of these stories,
Yeah.
that I've made up, including like I'm more enlightened because I've done this, that,
Right.
and the thing.
Right.
And maybe that's part of the softening and the ripening that comes with moving into elderhood.
Mhm. I think also one of the things you're talking about reminds me a lot of our conversations of ego dissolution, right? And I think that's a big phrase. What does that really mean? I think you simplified it really well, taking all these constructs that we use to describe ourselves and reminding us, bringing that back down to zero and just being human and focusing. Oh, that was beautiful about the vagus nerve starting in our face, right? It is so important to do what we're doing here, to do what we do when we get to have coffee together, to do that in a live space and to connect with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. To connect with other people. Yeah. And that's what, I'm so grateful today, really, just for the chance to be able to have an hour with you, connecting with you. We throw around, and we always do, these lofty concepts that we are always bantering around about. But like, really, like when I think about you, I just think about how it feels to be in your presence. How loving you are, how caring you've been with me at times. That's the connection. That's what counts.
Greg, I certainly appreciate our connection. Again, it was so amazing. Like, we get together. They put us together for ketamine. This was kind of cool. The school is so so well planned out and thoughtful in their absolute avoidance of planning and thinking things through,
I
right? In
know.
their right? They're so well planned and thoughtful in their chaos. Like for ketamine practicum, they let us know about each other, what, a couple weeks in advance. They email us, and you and I are emailing back and forth, and we get to meet each other, and we have an amazing connected time together. Um, Golly, man, I'll never forget how you took care of me after my journey, and just you were ready to process, and it was awesome, right? And then me trying to take care of you as you were busy taking care of everybody else. That
Yeah,
was
well,
so awesome. You're such a caregiver.
well, you know what? Part of it was that, but uh, you were really the caregiver because, like, in when I came out of that, I was not an easy client because here's what happened. I came out of that, and by the way, ketamine, I love, I love ketamine. Hey, 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 can you put this on pause? Love, I love, I love ketamine as a therapeutic medicine, and what it does is it really opens my heart. And the moment I came out of it, and I could feel my heart was wide open, I didn't want to save it, right? I wanted to pour it out there. And so immediately I
Yeah,
began like thinking about people that I care about that were in the building that I wanted to
yeah,
just give my love to, right?
yeah. Because
And
you had peers from your practice with you.
I
Yeah.
had
So
some,
these weren't people you just met. Like these were people you'd known for a while that you wanted to go connect with.
there were people here that, I cared about and my heart, really opened up. And rather than like the need to sit down and process what happened, my need was to share it, to pour it out of my heart. Not even really so much to caretake anybody, but so much as to share what had like opened up in my heart. And you, I think, in a way, demonstrated a little more skill than a lot of people. Um, Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Yeah, you demonstrated more skill, I think, than most in that moment because it takes a lot of skill to like lean back and like let the client choose how they want to unfold after coming out, right? And you never know how a person's going to come out. Sometimes a person comes out of a journey, they're extremely vulnerable and they're very sensitive and they really need to be held. And in my case, I wasn't feeling that way. I was feeling more exuberant. And
Yeah.
you just kept coming back. I'm like for about an hour, you just kept like coming over to me. You okay? You need anything? You okay? You need anything? And I felt incredibly taken care of and held by you. And I think that's the mark of a skilled practitioner. That's a great sitter. So
Thank
thank you.
you. I appreciate that. It's interesting. I've had to put that into practice now in recognizing that you trained me well, in that, some people come out emotive and ready to express and want to talk, and others need time to just come to and to process what they experienced. And we still process, but it's just different. And again, I love that. But, and when you went in, I mean, you were prepared, you had some great intentions, but also some experience too. So this, your intentions were, I believe, really prepared in a way through your past experience. And watching you journey first, I mean, watching you, Dr. Rohini, I mean, come on, what an amazing soul to have with us. What a blessing.
That was a real gift. I think that she is a rare soul on this
Yeah.
planet. What a gift.
I agree. Somebody I would want to just have in my life constantly, right? Like much like DMT, right? Dr. Rohini is the DMT of people, right? You just want her around all the time. So amazing and just connected.
Well,
Um,
let me share this. I think you'll appreciate this. After that experience with Rohini, I started using her as an anchor point for me when I journey.
Mhm.
I breathe in like a mantra 3 times, Rohini, Rohini, Rohini. Exhale, Rohini, Rohini, Rohini. Inhale, Rohini, Rohini, Rohini. Exhale, Rohini, Rohini, Rohini. See her eyes, her big brown eyes, and
Mhm.
her face.
Mhm.
And that has actually carried me through quite a number of journeys since
Mhm.
then.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. All right, brother. What do we want? I know you've got to get to session, right? You got sessions today?
I got a session in 15 minutes.
Because I'm totally ready to like go make a big old pot of tea and just continue to sit here and talk to you. But we have work that has to be done. What do you want the people to take away here, man? We talk about masculinity, psychedelics, your experiences, our journeys together. What do we leave the people with?
You know, the impulse is to want to wrap it up in a bow.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think we just gave people a smorgasbord. And so I think my hope really is for each person that's just listening to revisit what was the spark that was lit in you from this conversation? Was it shave butter? Was it,
That was for me.
mature masculinity, the rites of passage, moving into elderhood, opening, the heart, uh, enlightenment, whether or not we need to work for it or just surrender and allow it to be. Um, you know, um, the I have this tattoo
Hmm.
comes from Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. I put it around my wrist because I wanted to never forget it.
Hmm.
This is chapter 2, verse 45, I think. And what it says is in the moment of total surrender to whatever God is, the moment, total surrender to the moment, samadhi is attained in that moment, right? So I carried that around, but one of the things that we elaborated on in here is like that's not the point of life, experiencing samadhi, right? And so, just whatever, you were able to pick up from this that can help you to walk through your day in a way that aligns you with that, highest vision of yourself. Would actually love to hear what it was. I'd
Hmm.
love to hear what people took from this.
You know, because this started out as a podcast about logotherapy and the psychology, meaning I'll tie that in there, but you really hit that well, right? What did you find here that will help you discover meaning in your day? I love that. What string do you pull on? What word do you hold on? What becomes your mantra? What do you dive deeper into? What do you learn about? And how do they get to find a way to tell you where do people find you besides in your office out there in Austin?
Oh, yeah, I have a website, gregleota.com.
Hmm.
Uh, I have a Psychology Today profile, or you
Hmm.
just Google my name, just punch my name in, Greg Leota.
Do
Uh,
we talk a little bit about how people can find your amazing art?
oh,
Oh my goodness. I can't believe you've never told me about that, man. I don't even remember how I found it. Maybe it was in the signature of an email. I'm like, what is this link? Holy cow, Greg, some talent there, brother.
thank you. Yeah, I'm an artist, and I have my own site. It's a Fine Arts America site. So if you punch Greg Leota, Fine Art America, it'll take you to my page. Most of it is digital. Uh, I started out working with pastels and acrylics, but when I was living in the West Indies, I all of my pastels got moldy. They all got ruined. And I just like was actually literally I was laying in a hammock and wondering like what if I could my heart was closing up and I was wondering what can I do? Like, how can I open my heart? Maybe I can paint it open. What if I start painting again and open like, and so I went and I got an iPad and I downloaded an app that lets you create art, and I started painting hearts. That's all I did. Dozens and dozens of open hearts and playing with different colors and different effects. And that led me into a whole nother dimension of the art world. And that's what you're seeing there. And that's why
So much.
I don't try to sell it. I put it up there if anyone wants to buy it, but I don't, I just feel like, we need, they say the opposite of depression is expression. Like expression is the elixir. And I needed, I still do need something, some form of expression that I'm not trying to make money doing, but just open in my heart and allowing me to sort of be in this world. So I hope you go to there, like punch in Greg Leota, Fine Art America, and enjoy that.
Yeah.
I've heard
It's
it's
just fun to look at.
yeah,
Yeah, so many different possibilities I want to put in all my offices, and then I've got this stack of prints over here that I haven't even framed yet. So, but I'll get some. Yeah, and I feel like Greg, you certainly did that here today. You are a masterful healing professional, and hearing just your passion and just kind of talking through these topics. I'll be honest, I'm a little jealous of the person that gets your next hour, man, because you just seem on fire with the ability to help and heal. So, um, hopefully, I'm sure it'll be an amazing session.
well, thank you, Dan. I think that you're a gift. I want to thank you on behalf of everybody, for these beautiful podcasts that you've been giving the world, um, for your energy and your spirit and just the kind of man that you are. We need more men like you.
You and I keep talking about that with our peers, and we're going to keep growing men like this and men that are out there to help and transcend the self and do good things. So, thank you, brother. I appreciate you. I love our time together. Thank you so much. And hey, man, we've got so much more to talk about. You are welcome back anytime.
Right on. Thank you, Dan. I love you too, brother. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and speak with you about all these great topics today. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
All right.